Hey, welcome back to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with Steve and James. This is the channel where if you enjoy long conversations about the movies you love, remember to subscribe and ding that bell so you never ever miss a video. And James, what do we got on this week?
Today we're doing Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is the fourth film or third film in the Ghostbusters franchise, depending on what you choose to acknowledge and what you don't. It transplants the story from New York City to small town middle America, where a group of children and their mother move to a abandoned farmhouse where their grandfather used to live, who may or may not have a connection with the Ghostbusters, and they discover his toys, and strange things are afoot in the community.
Indeed.
So before we get started with the review, Steve, I wanted to know essentially what Ghostbusters means to you. You know, do you remember when you first saw it? What are your feelings about the other films in the franchise? Basically, what baggage did you bring
to
Ghostbusters Afterlife?
I'm of that age. I'm pretty sure I was about 16. Oh, it came out in 84. So I was getting ready to graduate high school. I remember seeing it at the cinema. It was huge. That Ghostbusters song was everywhere. And I've always been a huge Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd from the old Saturday Night Live gang. Those first alum to come through and become stars and break out of Saturday Night Live. And so this movie was kind of one of those movies that highlighted the Saturday Night Live gang that I first was introduced to as a young boy. So I loved it. I love Bill Murray. I loved his sarcasm that he brought a particular, remember in the old days, he has subsequently developed into a very mature actor that can do a number of roles. But back in the early 80s, he was really pigeonholed as the cocky swagger, iconoclast, and that resonated with me. I loved Vecman. I loved how he led the Ghostbusters. But to answer the question about what I bring to this or what history I have, I was submerged in that first film. In the second film, to a lesser extent, I think I enjoyed it. And I waited for years for that sequel that never happened. And then the rebooted Ghostbusters from a few years ago just didn't hit the right chords for me. In fact, I didn't make it through the whole movie.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So I just didn't find it funny. And I've come to this place where if something is really not working for me, I don't give it the time anymore. So
time is precious. That's what we're slowly learning.
So yeah, that's what I bring. That's what I bring to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you've got about 10 years on me, I think. I was about 7 when the first Ghostbusters came out, and we didn't go to the cinema much when we were very young. I mean, there was 3 of us, and there wasn't one close by, so it was a little bit inconvenient. But that was one of the first films I remember going to the cinema to see, and it was quite an event because I remember my mum took me and my older sister, and it was a surprise. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't even know we were going to see a film, let alone that it was going to be Ghostbusters. I don't think my sister knew either. She's a couple of years older than me, but so it's really stuck in my memory as just this really fun day out that we had, because we didn't know what we were going to do. My dad had taken my little sister off to have ice cream or something because it was going to be too scary for her. But I think even when we went in and sat down, I certainly didn't really know what we were in store for. And I remember really enjoying it, being scared, particularly at the beginning in the library sequence. And really, really loving it, really finding it so funny, and obviously the Stave Puft Marshmallow Man and all the rest of it. But the one enduring thing I recall from that particular screening is when the movie starts and that Ray Parker Jr. song comes on. And the audience started singing along to it. And obviously I'd never heard the song before. And I remember sitting in my seat going, how do they know the words to this song? I don't understand. This is new. This film is new. And the idea that, the film might have been out in the US already and the song had been a big hit in the charts, was completely alien to 7-year-old me. And I didn't understand how they knew the lyrics to this song.
The reason we knew the lyrics because that song was on every other song on the radio that in the summer of '84.
Yeah, and not the station that my parents were listening to, clearly. But so that's what I remember. Was this great day when we were taken out in secret and not getting, or that was the moment when I sort of began to understand that it had already kind of had a fan base. There was a sense of anticipation around it.
Well, it really entered the cultural zeitgeist too, because there's so many phrases that we use today that are from that movie. If you ever get goop on you, you've been slimed. They've been slimed. If anyone ever asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right, and all of that stuff. I mean, over the years, obviously, since then, I've watched it ad nauseum over and over and over and over again. But then I remember going to see the second one as well, and not being quite so impressed. But I was still young enough to be like, it's new, therefore it's the best thing, and I'm
Right.
super excited. But similarly, I think when the 2016 female reboot happened, it was very weird. It was a very sort of strange phenomenon in a lot of ways, because I think it surprised everybody involved. Because I think that was really the first time that it exposed quite how fanatical and rabid the fan base of the original film had become. Because this is what probably announced in 2014, 2015, something like that. So it had been, sort of 30 years since... 30 years since the original film had come out. And everyone was like, yeah, it's a great movie. We all remember it. Move on. But when they announced this all-female reboot, there was this small pocket, there was this fairly sizable sort of community that just lost their minds.
Right.
Were just so angry about the notion of it even existing. Mm-hmm. And it sort of kind of came on the cusp of sort of the Me Too movement and all of this kind of stuff. And I remember as a critic at the time, and I was a working critic then, you felt sort of a palpable sense of pressure to like the movie. That to prove that, just to get behind it, that this was a good thing, it was a positive thing.
Right.
And that, you felt that, you almost had a duty to champion it.
To support it, yeah.
Yeah, just to be supportive. And then it came out and it was rubbish.
Yeah.
And it was a tricky moment.
It was a bad movie.
It was a bad movie, and the reason it was bad had nothing to do with the fact that it was women in the roles. It was the script. It was just not, like you said, it just was not funny.
No.
And if you can't make your comedy funny, you have failed at your task, and it's as simple as that.
I feel almost guilty having to offer up this defense and say the same thing. It has nothing to do with females being cast in those roles, because I've been really enjoying Saturday Night Live, the new season, and some of the best comics on that show are female. I think some of my favorite comics these days are female. It has nothing to do with a gender issue or that they cast gender. I do question sometimes the need to suddenly switch, if it can be done with a strong script, like anything, if you can give me a good script, I don't care. But there is kind of a gimmick of switching the gender on a particular established franchise, which they did with Ocean's 11 as well, with Ocean's 8.
Yeah.
And to me, when the gimmick gets ahead of the script, it's lost. You better have this, and I would say the same thing about a good sequel. You can't just do the sequel because you need a sequel. You've got to have the script, and every good actor that will participate in a sequel will often say, as long as there's a good script. Bill Murray, why was he finally lured back into doing this new Ghostbusters? Is he felt the script warranted it.
Yeah, because I remember he had always said for years and years and years, because there'd been talk of a third Ghostbusters movie, I think ever since the second one came out, that he would only do it if he got killed off in the first reel. Mm-hmm. That was always his response to, would you do it? Because I think Dan Aykroyd, who wrote it, who wrote the whole thing, came up with the whole thing, had been tinkering away at like another one for a long, long, long time. And I think Bill Murray, he had just, I think, moved on, and just that was always his response. And I don't think that's what Dan Aykroyd wanted to do with his character.
I rather suspect, though, that age affects these actors. They get to a certain age and nostalgia hits, and there's, they think, if I'm ever going to do this, I got to do it now. Harrison Ford poo-pooed Star Wars for years and years, and finally was lured back. And I'm getting to the age of, I'm ever going to do this.
Same with Indiana Jones as well.
Yeah.
And it's you have to, and this I think is going to be very pivotal. The answer to this question is going to be very pivotal in what we actually thought of the film. Is whether or not that's a good idea. To what degree do you feel that you can genuinely bring something new to the character, or are you literally the dead horse that is being flogged?
Right.
Did we need all of that original cast of Star Wars to come back in the sequel trilogy? Did we need more Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford? Did we need... I mean, you look at Sylvester Stallone, and he's been doing that for decades. Right. He will not give up on Rocky and Rambo. They are his franchises, and he will just keep going until he falls to pieces, I suspect.
And to Sly's credit, and I don't want to give too off tangent, but his subsequent Rocky films, even in his elder age, have been quite good films.
I think they have got better, actually. Rocky Balboa, and I think pivoting to like the Creed franchise is a great idea. It was very sensible, very sensible. His Rambo films, on the other hand, are just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, that's they were never particularly strong to begin with. After the first one, the first one was quite good, and then they had a bit of a caricature built out of that '80s macho thing, which I don't think translates into a modern audience these days.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't think unless you are wearing spandex and you have the stars and stripes emblazoned across your chest. And I think that's the only way you can be like this kind of all-powerful super soldier kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, James, I think we've teased our listeners long enough with our pre-Ghostbusters review. I guess we probably should get into these initial thoughts. And you and I have not conferred on this. This is one of the things we were saying. We're coming into each other's review blind. So so what are your initial thoughts? I'll let you go, or should I go first?
Go on, you go first. You go
first. Okay. Yeah. Here's what I'm going to say. I wanted to love this movie, and I went into it with, I'm going to see my cast of characters again. And here's the thing. Tammy and I went to see it with Tammy, and we critiqued it coming out. And there's things I liked about this film. There's things that did work in this film. There was a few too many misses for me, though, to give it a full endorsement. It didn't hit my expectation level. I think there was some things that could have been implemented into this film that were no-brainers, that would have made this a much stronger installment. Having said that, it did hit a few of the buttons for me. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was seeing certain things again, seeing a electron gun fired up for the first time and hearing that sound and getting a bit of a goosebump when that happened. But by and large, this film missed for me, and that's my initial thoughts.
Okay, I think like what you were saying a minute ago, what a good sequel needs is it needs kind of a good script, and it can't just be a sequel for the sake of being a sequel. And when we saw the first sort of images of this, or the first trailer or whatever, I was like, what are they doing with this movie? Because for me at least, the appeal of Ghostbusters were those guys, these like eccentric sort of non-conformist scientists, who are doing their own thing and fighting back at the system as much as they're fighting back at the ghosts, and New York City.
Yes.
I think certainly for me, but for a whole generation, I think it's one of the pivotal New York movies. And it's a huge cliche to always talk about the location being a character in the film, but I think it's genuinely true here. Ghostbusters is as much about New York as it is about busting ghosts. And I remember the first time I went to New York was many, many, many years later. And the first thing I wanted to do was like go outside the library, see the lions on the steps there, and see the whatever that apartment building is that isn't quite as fantastic as it looks like in the film. But there was a palpable excitement, and sense of the city. And at the time, New York still wasn't cleaned up yet, was it? It was still a bit of a
it was the older place. Days. It was before. Right. Yeah, it was definitely had not gotten its renaissance at that time.
Sure, but I think the film kind of understands how important the city is. I mean, it uses the location so incredibly well throughout, but also, I mean, it ends with it's Ernie Hudson, isn't it? It's Winston Zeddemore covered in slime, no, covered in Stay Puft Marshmallow, and he just puts his arms out and goes, "I love this town," and that's kind of the last line in the movie, I think, almost. And so it acknowledges how important New York is to the identity of this film. And so when I saw what they were doing with this sequel, it was like, okay, you're not using the guys, this is kids, and they're not in New York. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're in a field. I was like, what are you doing? This isn't Ghostbusters.
This was, I didn't, in my initial thoughts, I didn't actually get into any specifics, but to pick up on that, James, Tammy and I came out saying everything in this movie was scaled less than the original. I'm watching a reenactment of the first movie. They hit a lot of numbers that we would be familiar with, same villain, a lot of the same story, but instead of taking, like you say, 3 really charismatic, nonconformist guys that are fun to watch, you take 3 kids that aren't bad, but they're not nearly as fun to watch. You take New York City, which is amazing, and you put the final battle at the top of this skyscraper, and it's very all-encompassing, and then you scale it down to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. So everything in this movie is less than its original.
Right, which seems to like break the golden rule of a sequel. It's like a sequel has to be bigger. You've got to one-up the previous one. There's a whole conversation, I think it's Jurassic World, just about sort of that burden of sequels that's happening to the park within the movie. They're like, oh, it's got to be bigger. Nobody's impressed by a T-Rex anymore. Right. And that's very much the case here. It's like, why are you choosing to sort of scale it back and do something smaller and more intimate and more child-friendly?
Yeah.
But okay, so this is the weird thing, though. So I came in going, this is going to be weird and dumb and off. The tone's going to be all off. But open mind, open mind, no expectations. That's you got to approach everything like that. I came away liking that stuff more than the other stuff. I came away enjoying the first half of the movie a lot more than the second half of the movie.
I see. Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It embraces those sort of lower stakes and the smaller scale. You do get to know. I mean, they're not Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. They're not the Ghostbusters, but you do get to kind of know these kids, and there is a bit of sort of patter. Obviously, there's a bit of inevitably a sort of Stranger Things vibe going on with what they're doing. But I liked the element of nostalgia, or the level of nostalgia, when it was simply them finding a ghost trap and them, getting the car back into working order, and like you say, firing up the proton pack for the first time and that kind of thing. And when the nostalgia was at that level, I was like, this is kind of working to a degree. It's clearly aiming. Well, I don't know if it's aiming for a younger audience. Like I said, I saw the first film when I was 7, and I felt it was aimed at me. But what I will say is, I didn't feel at any point in the film it was trying to be scary. Even
no, it wasn't trying to be scary, and I don't really have a strong critique for that. I'm not going to a Ghostbusters movie to be scared. I'm going more for the comedy element, the nonconformist element. And just picking up on what you said, like McKenna Grace, I thought was wonderful as Phoebe. All the kids were strong kids. I thought, in fact, I said to Tammy afterwards, I said, McKenna Grace reminds me of Winona Ryder in Beetlejuice.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
Whereas I think I remember seeing that movie years ago thinking, this girl's going to go places. She's fun to watch. McKenna Grace is fun to watch. She brought a lot of, she portrayed that role very, very well. Having said that, to me, the kids alone are not enough. The kids should have been a support. Paul Rudd, in my opinion, was the strongest element in this whole movie. And when they were fighting they're learning how to use the guns and use all the tools. They have Paul Rudd out on a date with Mom, and I'm thinking he should be leading these kids. That would be what I would think is fun to watch, is Paul Rudd, because Paul Rudd had the snarkiness that Peter Venkman had. He was the Bill Murray for this film. And they ended up turning him into the Rick Moranis
Yeah,
character, who's
yeah,
the dog.
exactly.
And as soon as they went that route, I leaned over to Tammy. I said, I cannot believe they just made Paul Rudd the Rick Moranis character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel the exact same. I was thoroughly enjoying his character. You know, when he was this sort of goofy supply teacher, you
Yes.
know, over the summer,
Who
and he's
puts
showing them
Cujo?
Cujo and what's he
Chucky.
shows Chuck, yeah, Child's Play, and you know he doesn't care, but you know he's a scientist at heart, and I was like, okay, cool, he's going to be their
Yeah.
mentor, you know,
Yeah.
through all of this, you know, because the mum is a horrible person for most of the movie.
For
I
most of
didn't
the
like
movie.
I
Yeah.
didn't like her at all. You know, she has no respect for obviously her father, who I don't think it's a spoiler, is Egon Spengler. You know,
Yeah.
this is the family of it. Well, actually, it doesn't matter if it's a spoiler. We're spoiling.
We're
So,
spoiling, yes.
so it
Spoil
is.
away,
I mean,
James. Spoil away.
yeah. So Egon Spengler is her father and their grandfather, and she's got no respect for him, or she just turns up because she has no choice. She needs money. They've been
Yeah.
evicted from their New York apartment. Oh, is it New York apartment? Did they come from New York? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't remember it being
The
kind of
city.
nondescript. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's literally like, there's no money, and we're stuck here because we have no choice. And she kind of hates everything. She's not a very good mum either. And then she ends up, yeah, sort of on sort of dates with Paul Rudd's character, and is kind of redeemed without really doing anything, just by kind of deciding to engage and pay attention, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it kind of falls to Paul Rudd to be a surrogate parent, but then they kind of cop out of that because I guess they have this idea that they want to reunite the original Ghostbusters. So it felt in the first half that they're setting up Paul Rudd as kind of the surrogate father and the mentor who's going to sort of coach them all the way through. And then, yeah, like you said, they ditch him and they turn him into the Rick Moranis character. And in one way, you know, once you've finished the film, you see why. It's because they want to bring back the ghost of Egon Spengler to mentor them. You know, they want to bring back all. You know, they have this idea that they want to reunite all the old Ghostbusters for that big finale that they think is going to be the big payoff. You know, and that means bringing back the ghost of Egon Spengler, and you can see why it makes sense for him to be the mentor. But it kind of leaves Paul. They hang Paul Rudd out to dry.
Yes. They to me, I would have. They missed in two different areas here. They didn't use Paul Rudd well in creating the next generation of Ghostbusters. He should have been a Ghostbuster. And he's the scientist. He's already been established. This guy's a scientist. In fact, I love the initial sparring between Phoebe and the Paul Rudd character when he's starting to realize, wow, she's really smart. And she's starting to realize, oh, he's more than just a supply teacher. These guys have a connection. To me, they failed to really build on what was, to me, a natural fit. But the second critique I have is they only brought the original three back at the very end, which was pretty anticlimactic to me. To me, there should have been a mini climax or a mini battle where they came in and saved the day on a smaller scale and then helped them and mentored them and had more interaction as they prepared for the big battle. That's the way I would have run this. And to me, the three, I basically got a cameo with those three. I don't know what the contract negotiations were like. And they said, hey, listen, we'll pop in for 6 hours and shoot or what.
Yeah, it was almost like they did it all in a day, wasn't it? And
yeah, it felt very after the fact.
Sure. And yeah, and like you said, instead of them showing up and, you know, they could have mentored these kids into, you know, standing up for the final battle. Like you said, they fight Gozer, and all you get is McKenna Grace's character Phoebe sort of being helped from the other side by the ghost of Egon Spengler, and you're like, yeah, it's hugely anticlimactic, and it's supposed to be this great bit of, you know, cathartic fan service, but it ends up falling completely flat for me, and I felt that something happened about halfway through the film where it's kind of like they lost their nerve, and they went from doing a kind of daring, ballsy, next generation style sequel to just falling back on the worst possible sequels, which is essentially just rehashing the successful movie,
Agreed.
rehashing the first one. And like you said, as we've mentioned, it basically is exactly the same, only less so.
Mm-hmm.
And you even have, it's just, like you said, same villain. You got the same dog characters, Gatekeeper and the Keymaster, and you're just like, really, you're gonna do this all again?
Yeah. Well, and even Annie Potts at the beginning, she makes her appearance as the secretary who is kind of overseeing the finances for the now deceased Egon. And it was wonderful to see her. But it was almost like, oh yeah, we contacted Annie Potts. She said she'd have 6 available hours. We had her walk on, wave, and then walk off again. Wouldn't it have been great to bring her and the gang together for the second half of the film? Like you said, the first half of the film, building up how they're starting to solve this mystery. What is this place? But then once the mystery's solved midway through, let's bring the gang back together again, and then play the Ray Parker tune like they did in the original, which was a great way of showing a montage of them kind of establishing themselves. Even the Ray Parker tune only comes for the end credits. There's never a time where we get kind of that excitement of now they're Ghostbusters again for the second hand. Like the band is back together. Essentially, the band never really comes back together, and everything is just kind of an afterthought in this film.
Well, this is it. I mean, they reunite off screen. You get the one scene where what's the kid's name? Podcast.
Yeah, podcast.
Yeah, they talk to, or they talk to Dan Aykroyd over the phone, and he essentially sort of just sort of dismisses them. But then what you needed to see was Dan Aykroyd contacting the others.
Mm-hmm.
And those conversations. I mean, are they still on friendly terms? Right. Are they easy to talk to? What's their relationships like? But it goes from him just having that one conversation with the kids on the phone, to them all just showing up at the end together, and you're like, well, were they just sitting around waiting?
Yeah, there was a lot of, and then they filled in blanks in the most haphazard way, rather than bringing them into the film earlier, developing some natural relationships, and then kind of moving on, whereas this was just kind of left to its own vices. And I kind of introduced the idea before too, where for me the kids alone are not enough, and that might be a personal preference for me. I think it's one of the reasons things like Stranger Things or even Stand By Me, movies that center around kids only, never kind of resonate with me. To me, there's just, after you get past the initial bickering of kids being kids, there's not enough gravitas. There's our word. Often in these movies, for me, there's not enough interest. They're not interesting enough. These kids were interesting. They were the perfect support kids to Paul Rudd, but they're the perfect backing band for like if Sting has his band. But if you take Sting away, okay, it's great that you got this band, but until Sting comes out, I don't feel like I'm watching what I came here to watch.
They're just a band.
Paul Rudd should have been the anchor for the new Ghostbusters, and the kid, and he's mentoring the kids, and then maybe eventually the older ones, the old team comes in to support that. But they went, hey, we're just going to make this a kids Ghostbusters thing, and that's not enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of that. I think actually I quite warmed to the kids more than I was expecting to. I was kind of invested in Trevor's efforts to pass himself off as slightly older and hook up with the girl who works at the diner with him, and to sort of integrate. Similarly with Phoebe, where she is this kind of sort of introverted science nerd, and I enjoyed seeing her kind of come out of her shell. I mean, the podcast kid, he's got his shtick, and he rises to the challenge, and you're like,
it's fine.
Yeah, you're one of these little Hollywood kids who comes in and dazzles on every interview, at every audition with your thing. And it was kind of fun. I never quite bought the fact that he would be quite as sort of charismatic and sassy as he is, but it's like, fine, he's not. Yeah. You're not trying to hang the movie on him. That's fine.
I hang with kids all the time. I've never met that kid.
Right. Right, yeah, he was just a little bit too advanced in
Yeah.
certain ways. And then, yeah, Paul Rudd as the perfect mentor. And I would have actually liked to see Paul Rudd sort of train them, teach them, help them, work out how to use the equipment or whatever, and then maybe sort of step back and just let the kids go out and do it. But the film just felt this insecurity, I think, this lack of confidence that they needed to put Bill Murray in it. And I think they were probably looking at the Star Wars franchise and things like that and going, it's not going to work unless we bring back the old guard, as it were. And I think it would have worked just fine. Yeah. And I think there were enough little nostalgia beats right from the opening where it has that kind of sort of eerie musical cue at the start.
I noticed that.
I think there was enough DNA, or enough slime lingering or ectoplasm lingering from the earlier installments for them to been accepted into the fold. And people might have been like, oh yeah, it's a lesser sequel, it's never going to be as good as the others, but we all knew that going in anyway. It's never was going to be, and certainly isn't.
No,
but
I think I
just felt that every time it moves closer to the older films, it pushed me further away.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd like to say I went into it with realistic expectations, and I was not expecting it to be as good as the first one, but there was notes that I thought it could have hit better. But having said that, I did think it did do some things very well. But let me ask you on another topic, what the heck was J.K. Simmons doing in this movie?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's really one of those blink and you'll miss it kind of cameos, isn't it? He's in it for 10 seconds almost.
10 seconds. It took me a second to go, that was J.K. Simmons.
That was J.K. Simmons. Yeah. Not that is J.K. I mean, again, it's a bit of fun. Maybe he was working nearby on another set. That's what I thought.
I thought, what was he? Was he hanging around visiting Bill Murray or something? And they said, "Hey, why don't we throw you in for a second?"
Almost certainly the case. Because it's a character that you're like, oh, it's J.K. Simmons. Okay, let's see what's going to happen. Oh no, okay, and he's gone immediately. I kind of enjoy. I thought it was fun to see Olivia Wilde. She's an actress I like. It took me a moment to recognize that was her as well. And that's fine.
I didn't recognize her until I saw the cast. Then I saw that it was Olivia Wilde. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had to double check, but I was, staring at it. I think, is that Olivia Wilde? And that's fine. I mean, I don't mind when other actors come in and do that. But it's when they crowbar in the original cast and then do nothing with them. Like Annie Potts is a perfect example of that. Yeah. And I think that one phone call to Dan Aykroyd would have been enough. It's almost like that first rebooted, not rebooted, but the X-Men movie, First Class.
Yeah.
When it jumps back to the 60s and then they're putting the team back together, and there's that one scene where they go up to Wolverine in the bar and they're like, and he's just like, get the hell out of here. And that's it. And they don't even say his name or anything like that. And you're like, that's perfect. He's been an established character in his own right.
Right.
And this is a way of connecting the old version of the franchise with the new version of the franchise.
I agree, James. It's like the old Miyagi, Mr. Miyagi. You stay on one side of the room safe, one side of the road safe, the other side of the road safe. You walk down the middle, you're going to get crushed. And that would have been perfect. The quick call to Dan Aykroyd, like establish a small cameo connection to the old school and leave it at that, or bring them back halfway through the movie and have them really be part of the story. But you didn't do this and you didn't do this. You tried to walk down the middle and it didn't resonate to the point where when they finally show up, I should have gotten goosebumps and I didn't. It was totally underwhelming. The three of those, I felt disappointed because I wanted to have that wave of they're here and now the day will be saved. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, that was, I did lean over to Tammy and say, but they are going to say, are you a god? And this time they're going to get it right. And sure enough, they did. Yeah. Yeah. But even then, the way it was done was so underwhelming.
They were kind of doing it kind of with the audience almost. It was like, come on, guys, what's he going to say? And you're like, stop it. It was so pandering. Horror. It's so pandering and kind of condescending. Yeah. That's the way it was so heavy-handedly handled. I was surprised in the screening that I went to. which is a preview a couple of days ago, there was a bit of a whoop and a cheer when they appeared at the end. Not from me,
Yeah.
but there's a significant portion of the audience that cheered at that moment, and I think that highlights something, is that, you know, I've been keeping one eye on the way that this film has been received, and it seems to be all over the map. You know, for some people it really is hitting them right in the feels, as they say, and you know, and getting them that with that nostalgia kick. For me, and I felt I was the target demographic. You know, it really was one of those movies when I was a kid that I watched over and over and over again. And I felt, you know, by that stage, I felt I was feeling nothing. It had already lost me. That first half, I was like, I'm intrigued. Okay, I can see the connective tissue. And then as soon as it changed tack halfway through, I was like, no, I'm lost. And and they never got me back. What I would like to now talk to you about, because I only knew because the PR guy told me on the way in. He was like, sit through the credits. I was like, okay. So there were two scenes, right?
I only stayed for one. I saw
the Sigourney Weaver one.
Yeah, I saw this. You're gonna have to inform me. I didn't know. Okay,
because there's more. There's a scene right at the end of the credits as well. So there's two credit sequences at the end, and it was weird because the movie ends and the credits start, and it says, and special appearances by, you know, Bill Murray, Dano, and it says Sigourney Weaver, and I was like, I had just enough time to say, did I miss Sigourney Weaver? And then she appears on the screen.
I had the exact same. We were starting to walk out of the cinema, and I turned and it said, and Sigourney Weaver, and I thought the exact same thing you did, James. Where did I miss her? And then boom, suddenly she was on the screen. Oh,
you know, I have learned. I sit through the credits. I'm not one of these people who's like, the minute the credits start, I'm like, right, okay, what are we having for dinner? No. You got to sit right to the end, because you never know. And if I remember rightly, the original Ghostbusters had a post-credit sequence right at the end. It's Slimer, right, and he's in the street eating eating hot dogs or something, or he just flies into the camera.
Yeah,
and you know, it's pretty inconsequential, but at the same time, it's there. And so I was like, you know, they have done it before, so let's wait. So you got Sigourney Weaver and Bill Murray, and they're just doing the electroshock card test, and he admits that he marked the card. You know, he's doing well, and she's shocking him, but it doesn't fit in with anything, and
it's just a cameo, and it's
and are they a couple? Are they not a couple? It doesn't quite commit to anything. It's just kind of there. They just kind of shoot it, and you're just kind of like, okay, you know, nice to see Sigourney Weaver in there, but it's completely meaningless scene. Who knows whether it was part of the film that got cut out, because it's so disjointed. It connects in no way to anything else that you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. But then at the end, it's weird. You've got it's basically focusing on Winston Zeddemore, Ernie Hudson's character, and he's sitting in a very plush office in a suit, and he's being interviewed by someone off camera who you never see, and he's talking about how essentially, you know, he's now very successful. He's running a business. I don't think they say what the business is.
No,
but he's got a very successful business going on, and that over the years, he's actually had to financially support Dan Aykroyd's occult shop, whatever it is. He's like, I pay the rent on that, and you know, I don't like to talk about it, but I keep him going. And then it cuts to the firehouse in New York City, which we have previously been told is now a Starbucks.
Right, yes.
And it's not a Starbucks. It's just sitting there derelict. And he's obviously just bought it. And, you know, you see it from inside, and the door opens, and Winston Zeddemore walks in, and it's all dusty and quiet, and he's like pulls a blanket off something. And then it cuts to the ghost containment unit in the basement. And it just kind of zooms in slowly, and you just see suddenly the light just go bing, you know, on, like something has awoken within it, or there's still something in it, or something like that. And then that's the end. So
okay, didn't stick around for that, but
so you stick around. Wait till the end. So I mean, which is obviously, it could be nothing. It could just be sort of a little playful coda, but it could also be suggesting that he's willing to finance a kind of reboot of the team, and that there are still ghosts in the in the machine.
I'd be up for it. You know, this movie was not a complete loss for me. I enjoyed it on many levels. I was disappointed that it misfired in too many of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, for me, it's a miss, definitely. But I think there was potential in that first half that is salvageable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they wanted to move forward with this and with these kids, I'd probably be interested to see where they're going with it.
Agreed. I would love if Paul Rudd wanted to run with those kids and maybe bring in another character or have Winston or something like that, or even the old gang show up in some capacity. Sign me up. I'm on board. Like I said, I thought there was strength. The kids were strong. There's just needs to be some. We've said everything that needs to be said on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like the first half. I mean, I've been drawing a lot of parallels to the Star Wars franchise, and I think for good reason. But it's like the first half felt like its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then the second half felt very much like J.J. Abrams' recent Star Wars sequels, where they're willing to dispense with anything new that they have built or explored in this sort of desperate, hungry, needy desire to please the fans.
Yeah.
And I thought I was a fan, and I was displeased.
Yeah.
I felt condescended and pandered to. I was like, I don't need this level of repetition or familiarity.
Like you said, it's the little things that actually make it for us. It's the movie starting with that little sound that we remember from the library when it started originally. Even just hearing that, that's what I need. I need the subtle. I don't need the in your face. There was too much in my face reminiscences rather than subtle reminiscences.
Well, this is it. I mean, because at the end of the day, if all you're going to do is restage the first film, I'll just go watch the first film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't need you to just tell that same story again, especially not with the same actors and playing the same characters. So,
you know, even the little Stay Puft Marshmallow guys, you know, use them once as a little connection point, but they kept bringing them back to the point where they were, you know, infesting the gun at the end, and it got to be too much, and there's no reason for it other than there was too many things that just didn't make sense to me and were put in just for that nostalgia feel that had no way of it didn't advance the story or underpin the story in any meaningful way.
Well, they just felt like gremlins. You know, rather than ghosts. I mean, I think even with the first film, you know, there's only a very tenuous hold on these ghosts actually having once been real people. You know, the representation of ghosts throughout the franchise is weird. You know, and slightly. It's
more like demons.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like sort of demons and critters and what have you. You know, because you know they are supposed to be essentially sort of some kind of glorified exterminators in a way. But by this film, you're like, you know, beyond Egon Spengler, are any of these characters actually ghosts in the traditional way that we understand it, or are they just sort of, you know, mischievous little critters, really?
Yeah, that need to be put down.
Yeah.
Exterminated. Yeah. Well, James, as we wrap up our review and our deep dive conversation, any final thoughts, and what would be your score out of 5 proton packs?
Okay. So I felt in the end, I think it's a more successful sequel than the all-female gender-flipped reboot from 2016. However, it's half a decent movie, after which it just, you know, descends into unnecessary pandering fan service, from which it failed to either win me over or you know, or satisfy in any way. I'll give it 2 proton packs out of 5.
I concur completely. I'm going to give it 2.5. I think next time I'm going to let me go first, so I don't have to gauge mine against yours every time, because I'm always thinking, but I've been vacillating in my head between 2.5 and 3. And I almost want to give a 3 to someone who is a old Ghostbusters fan, because I think you would enjoy it and I think you need to see it. But if I'm going to just give a straight score, I'm going to give this a 2.5. You could miss this movie and you haven't lost out in the great cinema Parthenon.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, you're not missing out
No.
if you don't go watch it at all. And it doesn't. I mean, does it bring anything new to the franchise? There's the possibility of a next generation, and I think that was its greatest strength, but also ignoring that was its greatest weakness.
Yeah, great. Well, great, James. We'll be back again next week. Thanks, everybody, for enjoying this time with us and this deep dive movie review. James, you want to ask people to subscribe and leave a cap?
Absolutely. Yeah, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Ding that bell to get notifications every time that a new episode is up, and leave us a comment. Let us know if you like what we're doing, if you don't like what we're doing, what you'd like to hear us talk about and watch us review in the future. We're open to all kinds of requests, and yeah, keep watching. Thank you.
With that, it's a wrap.